The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle as Princess Charlotte walked quietly through the rose garden. At 9 years old, she had already learned the weight of royal duty. But today felt different. There was tension in the air that even a child could sense. Queen Camilla had been acting strangely for weeks. Charlotte noticed how her step-grandmother's eyes followed her during family gatherings, and how conversations would suddenly stop when she entered a room. The young princess didn't understand the complicated world of royal politics, but she could feel that something was changing. Inside the castle, Camilla sat in her private study, surrounded by ancient books about royal lineage and succession. She had been researching for months, looking for any precedent that might support her growing ambitions. As Charles's queen, she felt entitled to more influence over the family's future. She spoke softly to certain ladies-in-waiting, hinting that changes might be coming. Some listened with interest while others remained loyally silent. The palace was slowly dividing into camps, though most people didn't realize it yet. Charlotte's personal protection officer, Inspector Sarah Mitchell, had been with the royal family for 15 years. She was trained to notice everything from potential security threats to changes in family dynamics. Lately, she had been observing unusual patterns in Camilla's behavior and the movement of certain staff members around the young princess. During breakfast that morning, Camilla made her first move. She casually mentioned to Charles that Charlotte needed more guidance and proper preparation for her future role. The king, distracted by state papers, nodded absent-mindedly without really listening to what his wife was suggesting. "I've been thinking," Camilla continued, her voice smooth as silk, "that Charlotte might benefit from a special position within the family, something that recognizes her unique status." Charles looked up briefly, but was quickly pulled back into a discussion with his private secretary about upcoming state visits. Inspector Mitchell stood nearby, officially invisible but carefully listening. Her training had taught her to recognize when someone was laying groundwork for something bigger. The queen consort's words seemed innocent enough, but there was something calculated about her timing and approach. Later that afternoon, Charlotte attended her private tutoring session in the castle's library. Her governess, Mrs. Prizes, Adelaide Thompson, had been teaching royal children for over 20 years. She was known for her discretion and her fierce protection of her students' well-being. As Charlotte worked on her French pronunciation, Mrs. Thompson noticed that the queen consort had begun making unexpected visits to these sessions. Camilla would arrive with various excuses, checking on Charlotte's progress, bringing tea, or simply wanting to observe the lessons. Each time, she stayed a little longer than necessary. "Your Royal Highness is doing wonderfully with her studies," Camilla would say, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I do think, however, that she needs to understand her special place in our family's future." Thompson would nod politely while making mental notes about these comments. The governess had served the royal family long enough to understand the delicate balance of power within the palace. She knew that Queen Camilla had always felt like an outsider looking in, despite her marriage to the king. There was an insecurity there that sometimes manifested in unexpected ways. That evening, as Charlotte prepared for bed, she confided in her nanny, Maria Santos, about feeling confused by all the adult conversations happening around her. "Everyone keeps talking about my special role and my future," Charlotte said, brushing her long hair, "but I don't understand what they mean." Maria, a warm woman from Spain who had been with the family since Charlotte's birth, chose her words carefully. "Sometimes adults worry too much about tomorrow instead of enjoying today, little princess. Your job is just to be yourself and keep learning and growing." But even Maria was beginning to feel uneasy. She had noticed how certain staff members now reported directly to Queen Camilla about Charlotte's daily activities. Information that had always stayed within the nursery team was now being shared more widely. This broke long-time protocols and traditions. Inspector Mitchell made her evening security report, as she had done thousands of times before. But tonight she added some unusual observations. She noted the increased attention being paid to Princess Charlotte by various palace figures, and the subtle changes in household routines that seemed to center around the young princess. The protection officer had built her career on being 2 steps ahead of any threat, and her instincts were telling her that something was developing. It wasn't an external security threat. It was something from within the palace walls themselves, the most dangerous kind of threat for any royal family. As the castle settled into night, different groups of people were making plans. Queen Camilla was reviewing historical precedents in her study, convinced that she had found a way to elevate her influence through Charlotte. Meanwhile, Inspector Mitchell was quietly reaching out to trusted colleagues, beginning to build her own network of information. Mrs. Thompson sat in her small apartment within the castle grounds, writing careful notes about the changes she had observed. As Charlotte's governess, she felt a deep responsibility to protect her student from any manipulation or harm, even if that harm came from within the royal family itself. The young princess slept peacefully, unaware that she was becoming the center of a growing storm. Her natural innocence and trust made her vulnerable to the complicated schemes of adults who claimed to have her best interests at heart. Down in the security offices, night shift guards reviewed the day's activities. They noticed the unusual pattern of meetings and conversations, but most dismissed it as typical palace politics. Only a few veteran staff members sensed that something more significant was beginning to unfold. The royal household had always operated on tradition, protocol, and unwritten rules that had evolved over centuries. But Queen Camilla was prepared to challenge some of those traditions if it meant securing her vision for the family's future. She believed she was acting out of love and concern, but others would soon question her true motivations. As midnight approached, the ancient castle held its secrets close. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and revelations that would test the loyalty and courage of everyone who truly cared about Princess Charlotte's well-being. The battle lines were being drawn, though most people didn't realize the conflict had already begun. The story of royal ambition, protection, and the innocent child caught in the middle was just beginning to unfold. In the quiet corridors of power, alliances were shifting and plans were being made that would soon bring everything out into the open. 3 weeks had passed since Queen Camilla began her subtle campaign, and the changes in palace life were becoming more noticeable. Princess Charlotte found herself attending more formal events where Camilla would introduce her with unusual emphasis on her special destiny and important role in the monarchy's future. Inspector Mitchell had been documenting everything. Her security reports now included detailed observations about the shifting dynamics within the royal household. She noticed that certain staff members had been reassigned to work more closely with Princess Charlotte, all of them people who had previously shown loyalty to Queen Camilla. The breakthrough came during a private conversation that Inspector Mitchell accidentally overheard. She was checking the security systems in the corridor outside Camilla's study when the Queen Consort's voice carried through the slightly open door. Camilla was speaking with her closest advisor, Lady Margaret Thornton, about her plans for Charlotte. "The precedent is clear," Camilla was saying, her voice filled with excitement. Princess Charlotte could be given the title of Crown Princess, recognizing her as the heir apparent after William. It would be unprecedented for someone so young, but it would secure her position and give us more influence over her education and preparation. Lady Thornton's response was cautious. "Your Majesty, such a title doesn't exist in the British system. The Prince of Wales is the heir apparent, and William already holds that position. Creating a new title for Princess Charlotte could be seen as what?" Camilla interrupted sharply. "As ensuring that she's properly prepared for her royal duties? As giving her the recognition she deserves as a future queen? Charles has been too lenient with the children's education. They need more structure, more understanding of their responsibilities." Inspector Mitchell felt her blood run cold. This wasn't about Charlotte's education or preparation. This was about power and control. Queen Camilla was planning to create a new title that would place Charlotte in a position where Camilla could have unprecedented influence over the young princess's upbringing and future. The protection officer knew she had to act, but she also understood the delicate nature of the situation. Accusing the Queen Consort of manipulation without absolute proof could end her career and potentially harm Charlotte in the long run. She needed allies, and she needed evidence. That afternoon, Inspector Mitchell approached Mrs. Thompson during Charlotte's writing lesson. The governess was watching her student with obvious pride as Charlotte guided her pony through a series of gentle jumps in the castle's private arena. "Mrs. Thompson," Inspector Mitchell said quietly, "I need to speak with you privately about Princess Charlotte's well-being. I believe there may be some complications developing." The governess studied the protection officer's serious expression. "I've had some concerns myself," she admitted. "The Queen Consort has been making suggestions about changes to Charlotte's curriculum. She wants to add more protocol training, more formal etiquette lessons, and less time for creative pursuits." "What kind of protocol training?" Inspector Mitchell asked. though she suspected she already knew the answer. Training appropriate for someone with a much higher royal rank than Princess Charlotte currently holds, Mrs. Thompson replied carefully. When I questioned the necessity, I was told that Charlotte would soon need such knowledge for her enhanced role in the family. The two women watched as Charlotte laughed with pure joy after successfully completing a difficult jump. The contrast between the child's natural happiness and the serious adult machinations surrounding her was stark and troubling. There's something else, Mrs. Thompson continued. I've been asked to prepare a detailed report on Charlotte's strengths and weaknesses, her personality traits, and her potential for leadership. The request came directly from Queen Camilla's office, bypassing the usual channels through Prince William. Inspector Mitchell felt pieces of the puzzle falling into place. They're building a case for why Charlotte needs this new title and the accompanying changes to her upbringing. Have you prepared the report? I've been deliberately slow in my response, Mrs. Thompson admitted. My instincts tell me that something isn't right about this situation. Princess Charlotte is a wonderful child, but she's still just 9 years old. She should be allowed to remain a child for as long as possible. That evening, Inspector Mitchell made a decision that would change everything. Instead of filing her regular security report through normal channels, she requested a private meeting with Prince William. She knew this was highly irregular and potentially dangerous to her career, but she felt she had no choice. The meeting was arranged for the following morning in William's private office at Kensington Palace. Inspector Mitchell had served the royal family with distinction for 15 years, so her request for an urgent private audience was granted without question. William listened with growing concern as Inspector Mitchell laid out her observations and the conversation she had overheard. His face darkened when she mentioned Camilla's plan to create a new title for Charlotte. A crown princess title? William said, his voice tight with controlled anger. That would completely bypass the established line of succession. Charlotte is fourth in line to the throne after me, George, and Louis. Creating such a title would be constitutionally inappropriate and personally devastating to my sons. That's exactly what concerns me, Your Royal Highness, Inspector Mitchell replied. I believe Queen Camilla sees an opportunity to increase her influence by positioning herself as Princess Charlotte's primary royal mentor. The new title would give her justification for taking a much larger role in Charlotte's upbringing. William stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where his children often played. My daughter is happy and well-adjusted because she's been allowed to develop naturally within the royal system. She understands her duties without being overwhelmed by them. This plan could destroy that balance. The Prince of Wales turned back to face Inspector Mitchell. What evidence do we have beyond your observations and the overheard conversation? Mrs. Thompson has been asked to prepare psychological and developmental reports on Princess Charlotte, bypassing normal protocols. There have been staff reassignments that place Camilla's allies in closer contact with your daughter. And there have been subtle changes to Charlotte's schedule that increase her formal royal appearances. I need to speak with Catherine immediately, William said, reaching for his secure phone. She's been concerned about some changes she's noticed in Charlotte's routine, but we didn't connect them to anything this significant. Within an hour, Princess Catherine arrived at Kensington Palace. Her usually calm demeanor showed signs of stress as William explained the situation. When she learned about Camilla's plans, her maternal protective instincts flared. Charlotte came home last week asking me what a crown princess was, Catherine said, her voice filled with realization. She said Queen Camilla had mentioned that some princesses have special titles that show how important they are. I thought it was just casual conversation. It was preparation, William replied grimly. Camilla has been planting seeds in Charlotte's mind, making the idea seem normal and desirable. Inspector Mitchell watched the royal couple process this information. She could see the anger and protective concern building in both parents, but she also saw their dilemma. Confronting Queen Camilla directly could create a massive family crisis and potentially harm King Charles. Your Royal Highnesses, Inspector Mitchell said carefully, I believe we need to act quickly but strategically. If Queen Camilla presents this proposal to the king when he's distracted or stressed, he might agree without fully considering the implications. Catherine looked at her husband with determination. We need to speak with your father immediately before Camilla has a chance to present her plan. Charlotte is our daughter, and decisions about her future should involve us, not be made behind our backs. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the gravity of the situation. A confrontation was now inevitable, and the outcome would affect not just Princess Charlotte's future, but the dynamics of the entire royal family. Inspector Mitchell had done her duty by bringing this information forward, but she knew her actions would have consequences. Queen Camilla would not forgive being exposed, and the protection officer might find herself transferred or even dismissed from royal service. But as she thought about Princess Charlotte's innocent trust and natural joy, Inspector Mitchell knew she had made the right choice. Some things were more important than job security or palace politics. A child's well-being was one of them. The battle to protect Princess Charlotte from manipulation and premature royal burdens was about to begin in earnest. The next few days would determine whether loving parents and loyal staff could overcome the ambitious schemes of those who claimed to act in Charlotte's best interests. The confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. King Charles was reviewing state papers in his private study at Buckingham Palace when Queen Camilla entered with a folder of documents and a confident smile. She had chosen her moment carefully. The king was tired from a long day of official duties and likely to agree to anything that seemed reasonable. "Darling," Camilla began sweetly, settling into the chair across from his desk, "I've been thinking about Charlotte's development, and I have some wonderful ideas that I'd like to discuss with you." Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, William and Catherine were preparing for their own difficult conversation with the king. They had decided to request an immediate private audience, but palace protocol meant they couldn't simply demand to see Charles without proper notice. Inspector Mitchell had returned to Windsor Castle to continue her regular duties, but she remained in constant contact with Mrs. Thompson and Maria Santos. All three women had agreed to document any unusual activities or conversations involving Princess Charlotte. Back at Buckingham Palace, Camilla was presenting her case to Charles with practiced skill. "I've been researching royal precedents, and I believe we have an opportunity to better prepare Charlotte for her future role by giving her a more formal position within the family hierarchy." "What kind of position?" Charles asked, not looking up from his papers. "A crown princess title?" Camilla said confidently. "It would recognize her special status as a future queen and allow us to provide her with more comprehensive royal training. She's such a bright child, and I feel she's being underutilized in her current position." Charles finally looked up, his brow furrowed with confusion. "Camilla, Charlotte is 9 years old. She's fourth in line to the throne. What are you talking about with this crown princess business?" Camilla had prepared for this reaction. She opened her folder and pulled out several documents. "I've found historical precedents where young royals were given enhanced titles to reflect their importance to the monarchy's future. Charlotte has natural leadership qualities that should be nurtured more formally. At Windsor Castle, Charlotte was having her evening meal with Maria Santos when she made an innocent comment that would later prove crucial. "Maria," the young princess said between bites of her soup, "Queen Camilla says I might get a special new title that would make me more important than George and Louis. Is that true?" Maria nearly dropped her serving spoon. "What exactly did Queen Camilla say, sweetheart?" "She said that sometimes the most special princess gets a crown princess title, and that it means she's the most important young royal in the family. She asked me if I thought that would be nice." Charlotte continued eating, unaware of the impact of her words. Maria excused herself and immediately called Mrs. Thompson, who in turn contacted Inspector Mitchell. The protection officer realized that Camilla was now directly manipulating Charlotte's understanding of royal hierarchy and her place within it. "This has gone too far," Inspector Mitchell said during their urgent phone conference. "She's not just planning to present this to the king, she's preparing Charlotte to expect and want this title. The psychological manipulation of a child is unacceptable." At Kensington Palace, William received the call about Charlotte's conversation with Maria. His anger reached a breaking point. Without waiting for proper protocol, he called his father's private line directly. "Father, I need to speak with you immediately about Charlotte," William said when Charles answered. "It's urgent, and it concerns Camilla's plans for my daughter." Charles, who was still processing Camilla's proposal, felt a chill. "What plans?" "William, what are you talking about?" "I'm coming to Buckingham Palace now," William said firmly. "Don't make any decisions about Charlotte until I get there." Camilla, who could hear part of the conversation, realized that her carefully laid plans were unraveling. "Charles," she said quickly, "I think we should finalize this decision tonight. Charlotte needs stability and clear direction for her future. No, Charles said, holding up his hand. Something is happening here that I don't understand. We're going to wait for William. The 30-minute drive from Kensington to Buckingham Palace felt like hours to William and Catherine. They had brought copies of Inspector Mitchell's observations and Mrs. Biz Thompson's reports about the changes in Charlotte's education and routine. When they arrived at Buckingham Palace, they found Charles and Camilla in an uncomfortable standoff in the king's study. Camilla's documents were spread across the desk, but Charles was no longer looking at them. "Father," William began without preamble, "Queen Camilla has been planning to manipulate Charlotte into accepting a new title that doesn't exist in British royal protocol. She's been working behind our backs for weeks, changing Charlotte's education, influencing her thinking, and preparing to present you with this proposal tonight."
Camilla's face flushed red.
"How dare you accuse me of manipulation? Everything I've done has been for Charlotte's benefit. She has enormous potential that's being wasted with your overly casual approach to her royal education." "Charlotte is 9 years old," Catherine said, her voice rising with maternal fury. "She should be playing with her friends and enjoying her childhood, not being groomed for a position that would put her in conflict with her brother's rightful places in the succession." Charles looked between his wife and his son, trying to understand how this situation had developed without his knowledge. "Camilla, is it true that you've been making changes to Charlotte's routine without discussing it with William and Catherine?"
"I've been making suggestions for her improvement,"
Camilla replied defensively. "As queen consort, I have a responsibility to ensure that all the young royals are properly prepared for their duties. But you don't have the right to make unilateral decisions about our daughter," William said firmly. "And you certainly don't have the right to start preparing her psychologically for a title that doesn't exist and would be constitutionally inappropriate." The room fell silent as Charles processed what he was hearing. He looked at the documents Camilla had prepared, seeing them now in a completely different light. What had seemed like thoughtful preparation an hour earlier now appeared to be a calculated campaign to increase Camilla's influence over his granddaughter. "Camilla," Charles said slowly, "did you speak to Charlotte about this crown princess title?" Camilla hesitated, knowing that lying would only make things worse. "I may have mentioned that special princesses sometimes receive special titles. I wanted to prepare her for the possibility. You told my 9-year-old daughter that she might become more important than her brothers," William said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Do you understand the psychological damage that kind of manipulation can cause?" Catherine stepped forward. Charlotte came home confused and asking questions about why some princesses are more special than others. She's been having nightmares about disappointing the family and not being good enough for her special role. Charles felt a wave of protective anger toward his granddaughter. He had always prided himself on learning from the mistakes of previous generations, on allowing his grandchildren to have more normal childhoods despite their royal status. "This ends now," Charles said with royal authority. "Camilla, you will not make any more suggestions about Charlotte's education or royal role without explicit approval from William and Catherine. The idea of a crown princess title is completely inappropriate and will not be discussed again." Camilla's carefully constructed plan was crumbling, but she made one last attempt. "Charles, you're making a mistake. Charlotte has exceptional potential, and with proper guidance, she could become one of our most effective working royals. My suggestions were designed to help her reach that potential. Your suggestions were designed to increase your control over a child who isn't even your granddaughter," William said bluntly. "This was never about Charlotte's potential. It was about your desire to have more influence within the family." The truth of William's words hung in the air like a challenge. Camilla realized that her ambitions had been exposed, and that any further defense would only make her appear more manipulative. Charles looked at his wife with disappointment and growing understanding. "Camilla, I think you should retire for the evening. William, Catherine, and I need to discuss how to repair any damage that may have been done to Charlotte." As Camilla gathered her documents and left the study, the remaining family members began to plan how to protect Charlotte from further manipulation while ensuring that she remained unaware of the adult conflict that had surrounded her. Inspector Mitchell, Mrs. Thompson, and Maria Santos would later be commended for their vigilance and courage in protecting Princess Charlotte. Their actions had prevented a scheme that could have caused lasting psychological harm to an innocent child. The royal family had been tested, and those who truly prioritized Charlotte's well-being had emerged victorious. But the incident would have lasting consequences for relationships within the palace and for Queen Camilla's position in the family hierarchy. The days following the confrontation at Buckingham Palace were tense and awkward throughout the royal households. Queen Camilla had retreated to her private apartments and was refusing most official engagements, claiming to be suffering from a minor illness. The truth was that she was deeply embarrassed and angry about how her plans had been exposed and thwarted. King Charles found himself in the difficult position of managing both his marriage and his relationship with his son. He had been forced to acknowledge that his wife had overstepped serious boundaries, but he also understood that Camilla's actions had come from a place of genuine concern for the monarchy's future, even if her methods were completely inappropriate. Princess Charlotte, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware of the adult drama that had swirled around her. Her parents had made a conscious decision not to burden her with knowledge of Camilla's scheme, instead focusing on reassuring her that she was loved and valued exactly as she was. Inspector Mitchell had been quietly commended by Prince William for her vigilance and professionalism. However, she knew that her relationship with Queen Camilla would never recover, and she began to consider whether her position at the palace was sustainable in the long term. Thompson had resumed Charlotte's normal educational routine, deliberately emphasizing creative subjects and age-appropriate learning. The governess was determined to help Charlotte maintain her natural curiosity and joy in learning, free from the pressure of accelerated royal protocol training. Maria Santos had become even more protective of Charlotte's emotional well-being. She spent extra time with the young princess during their evening routines, listening carefully for any signs that the recent events had affected Charlotte's sense of security or self-worth. A week after the confrontation, Prince William made an unexpected decision. He requested a private meeting with Inspector Mitchell, Mrs. Thompson, and Maria Santos at Kensington Palace. When the three women arrived, they found William and Catherine waiting for them in the informal sitting room. "I wanted to thank you all personally," William began, "for your dedication to Charlotte's well-being. Your actions prevented something that could have caused lasting harm to our daughter, and Catherine and I will never forget that." Catherine stepped forward with genuine warmth. "You saw something wrong, and you had the courage to speak up even though it meant challenging very powerful people. That takes real integrity, and it shows how much you care about Charlotte, as a person, not just as a princess." Mrs. Thompson spoke first. "Your Royal Highnesses, we simply did what anyone who cares about a child would do. Princess Charlotte is a wonderful little girl who deserves to grow up feeling secure and loved, not manipulated or pressured. The Queen Consort wasn't necessarily acting with malicious intent," Inspector Mitchell added diplomatically, "but the impact on Princess Charlotte could have been quite damaging regardless of the intentions behind it." William nodded appreciatively. "That's exactly the kind of balanced perspective that makes you so valuable to our family. Which brings me to why I asked you all here." The Prince of Wales walked to his desk and picked up 3 official documents. "I'm implementing new protocols for Charlotte's care and education that will prevent this kind of situation from happening again. Each of you will have enhanced authority to flag any concerns about Charlotte's well-being directly to Catherine and me. Additionally," Catherine continued, "we want to formalize your roles as Charlotte's primary protection team. Inspector Mitchell, you'll continue as her protection officer with expanded authority to investigate any potential threats to her emotional or physical well-being, whether they come from inside or outside the palace. Mrs. Thompson," William said, turning to the governess, "your educational authority over Charlotte will be strengthened, and any changes to her curriculum must be approved by you and by us. No one else will have the authority to modify her learning plan. And Maria," Catherine added with a smile, "you'll officially become Charlotte's senior nanny, with full authority over her daily care routines. Your judgment about what's best for Charlotte will carry the same weight as a parent's decision." The 3 women were touched by this demonstration of trust and respect. They had risked their positions to protect Charlotte, and instead of facing consequences, they were being rewarded with greater responsibility and authority. "There's one more thing," William said seriously. "We've decided that Charlotte needs to understand, in an age-appropriate way, that some adults might try to make her feel special in ways that aren't healthy. We want to prepare her to recognize manipulation without making her suspicious of everyone around her." Mrs. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually an excellent idea. We can frame it as part of her general education about making good decisions and trusting her instincts when something doesn't feel right." Over the following weeks, Charlotte's routine gradually returned to normal, but with new safeguards in place. The young princess continued to attend family events where Queen Camilla was present, but there was now a careful boundary around any private conversations between them. Camilla herself seemed to have accepted the new reality. She was polite but distant with Charlotte, focusing her attention instead on her official royal duties and charitable work. The queen consort had apparently realized that her attempt to gain influence through Charlotte had backfired spectacularly, damaging her relationships throughout the family. King Charles had privately spoken with Camilla about the importance of respecting boundaries with the grandchildren. While he loved his wife and understood her desire to be helpful, he made it clear that any future involvement with the children's upbringing must be approved by their parents. Inspector Mitchell noticed a significant change in palace dynamics. Staff members who had previously been uncertain about loyalties were now clearly aligned with protecting the children's interests above all other considerations. The incident had served as a reminder of what really mattered in their service to the royal family. Charlotte's natural resilience had helped her bounce back quickly from the confusion of those few weeks. Her parents had reinforced her sense of security by spending extra time with her and by maintaining consistent routines that emphasized normalcy within their royal life. The young princess had also benefited from the increased attention and protection from her care team. Mrs. Thompson introduced new learning activities that boosted Charlotte's confidence in her own judgment and decision-making abilities. Maria Santos had used bedtime stories and gentle conversations to help Charlotte understand that her worth wasn't dependent on titles or special positions, but on being kind, curious, and true to herself. One evening, about a month after the crisis, Charlotte made a comment that showed how well the adults around her had handled the situation. "Mama," she said as Catherine tucked her into bed, "I'm glad I don't need to worry about special titles and things. I like just being me." Catherine felt a wave of relief and gratitude. "You should always just be yourself, sweetheart. That's all any of us want, for you to be happy and healthy and kind." "I know," Charlotte said sleepily. "Mrs. Thompson says that the most important thing is to be good to people and to keep learning new things. And Maria says that being special comes from inside, not from what people call you." As Catherine kissed her daughter goodnight, she reflected on how close they had come to losing Charlotte's natural wisdom and self-confidence. The adults who truly cared about Charlotte had formed a protective circle around her, and that protection had proven stronger than any manipulation or scheming. The royal family had learned valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and the importance of putting children's well-being above all other considerations. Princess Charlotte would continue to grow up secure in the knowledge that she was surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not for what she might become. The crisis had ultimately strengthened the bonds between Charlotte and those charged with her care, creating an even more protective and nurturing environment for the young princess as she continued to navigate her unique position in the world. 6 months had passed since the Crown Princess incident, and life at the royal palaces had settled into a new rhythm. Princess Charlotte was thriving under the enhanced protection protocols, growing more confident and naturally graceful with each passing day. Her education continued to balance royal responsibilities with normal childhood experiences, and she remained blissfully unaware of how close she had come to being manipulated. Queen Camilla had gradually resumed her full range of royal duties, but her relationship with the Wales family remained cordial but distant. She had learned to channel her ambitions into her official charitable work, where she could have meaningful impact without overstepping family boundaries. Inspector Mitchell had been promoted to Senior Protection Officer for all 3 Wales children, recognizing her exceptional dedication and judgment. Her enhanced role gave her even greater authority to monitor threats to the children's well-being, and she had developed new protocols that other royal protection teams began to adopt. Mrs. Thompson had been awarded the Royal Victorian Order for her service to the family, a rare honor that recognized not just her educational excellence, but her moral courage in protecting Princess Charlotte. The governess continued to innovate in royal education, creating programs that prepared royal children for their duties while preserving their childhood innocence. Maria Santos had become a beloved figure throughout the royal household staff, admired for her unwavering dedication to Charlotte's emotional well-being. Her promotion to senior nanny came with expanded responsibilities for advising on the care of all the Wales children. The most significant long-term change was in how the royal family approached the education and protection of the younger generation. Prince William and Catherine had worked with King Charles to establish new guidelines that prioritized children's emotional health and natural development over accelerated preparation for royal roles. Charlotte herself had grown into her role as a young royal with remarkable grace. At nearly 10 years old, she demonstrated natural empathy and intelligence that impressed everyone who met her. More importantly, she maintained the kind of genuine happiness and curiosity that showed she was developing in a healthy, balanced way. The protective circle that had formed around Charlotte during the crisis had become a permanent feature of her upbringing. The three women who had risked their careers to protect her now formed an integrated team that ensured her continued well-being while respecting her growing independence. One afternoon in late spring, Charlotte was having her weekly riding lesson when she noticed Queen Camilla watching from the viewing area. The young princess approached Camilla politely after her lesson, showing the natural courtesy that had been instilled in her from birth. "Hello, Queen Camilla," Charlotte said with a genuine smile. "Did you enjoy watching the lesson?" "Yes, dear," Camilla replied, her tone warmer than it had been in months. "You're becoming quite an accomplished rider. Your posture and control have improved remarkably." "Thank you," Charlotte said. "Mrs. Thompson says that riding teaches patience and trust, not just with horses but with people too. She says it's important to know when someone has your best interests at heart." Camilla felt a pang of recognition at the subtle wisdom in Charlotte's words. The child was developing exactly the kind of insight that would serve her well in her royal role, but she was developing it naturally, through experience and guidance, rather than manipulation. "That's very wise advice," Camilla said quietly. "Mrs. Thompson is an excellent teacher." As Charlotte skipped away to join her friends, Camilla remained watching from the viewing area. She had come to understand that her earlier approach had been misguided, driven more by her own insecurities than by Charlotte's actual needs. Inspector Mitchell observed this interaction from her discreet position nearby. She noted that Camilla seemed to have genuinely accepted the new boundaries and appeared to be developing a healthier relationship with Charlotte based on respect rather than manipulation. That evening, during Charlotte's bedtime routine, she mentioned her conversation with Queen Camilla to Maria Santos. She seemed different today. Charlotte observed with the perceptiveness that often surprised adults. "Less worried about things." "How do you mean, sweetheart?" Maria asked, helping Charlotte with her pajamas. "Before, when she talked to me, it always felt like she was trying to teach me something important that I was supposed to remember. Today, she just seemed happy to watch me ride. It felt more normal." Maria smiled at Charlotte's emotional intelligence. "Sometimes adults need time to learn things too, just like children do. Maybe Queen Camilla has learned how to be a better friend to you." A few weeks later, the entire royal family gathered for a celebration of Princess Anne's birthday at Balmoral Castle. Charlotte was excited to see her cousins and to spend time in the Scottish countryside she loved. The occasion also provided the first major family gathering since the Crown Princess incident. During the evening reception, Charlotte found herself in a conversation with several adult relatives who were asking about her interests and activities. In the past, such conversations might have made her feel pressured to prove herself worthy of special attention or titles. Instead, Charlotte spoke confidently about her love of art, her progress in French, and her excitement about a science project she was working on with Mrs. Thompson. Her natural charm and intelligence shone through without any artificial enhancement or coaching. Queen Camilla observed this conversation from across the room, and for the first time, she felt genuine pride in Charlotte's development without any accompanying desire to claim credit or influence. The young princess was becoming exactly what a royal child should be: confident, kind, intelligent, and authentically herself. Later that evening, Camilla approached Prince William privately. "I wanted you to know," she said with obvious sincerity, "that Charlotte is developing beautifully. You and Catherine should be very proud of the young woman she's becoming." William studied his stepmother's expression, looking for any hidden agenda. Finding none, he relaxed slightly. "Thank you, Camilla. She is pretty special, isn't she?" "She is," Camilla agreed. "And I want you to know that I've learned from my mistakes. I allowed my own concerns about the monarchy's future to cloud my judgment about what was best for Charlotte as an individual child." "I appreciate you saying that," William replied. "Charlotte cares about you, and it's important that she has positive relationships with all her family members." As the celebration continued around them, both adults reflected on how the crisis had ultimately led to better understanding and stronger boundaries. Charlotte's natural development had been protected, and the family had learned valuable lessons about trust, communication, and the paramount importance of putting children's well-being first. Inspector Mitchell, Mrs. Thompson, and Maria Santos continued their vigilant care of Charlotte, but now with the confidence that came from proven success. They had demonstrated that courage, integrity, and genuine love for a child could overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation. Charlotte herself remained at the center of it all, happy, healthy, and growing into her unique role with natural grace. She was surrounded by adults who valued her for who she was, not for what she might become, and that foundation would serve her well throughout her life. The royal family had faced a test that could have caused lasting damage, but instead they had emerged stronger and more united in their commitment to protecting the children's well-being. The lessons learned from the Crown Princess incident would influence how they approached royal child-rearing for generations to come. As Charlotte grew older, she would gradually learn about the challenges she had unknowingly faced as a child, and she would come to appreciate even more the dedicated people who had protected her when she couldn't protect herself. Their courage and love had given her the greatest gift possible: the freedom to become authentically herself while preparing for her royal responsibilities. The story of the royal guard who stepped in to protect an innocent child had become a testament to the power of doing what's right, regardless of the personal cost. Princess Charlotte's bright future was built on that foundation of protection, love, and unwavering commitment to her well-being above all other considerations.